My name is Ainomera and I will be presenting about Argentina's background. Argentina is a country known for its culture, tourism and high inflation. Just like any other countries, Argentina also has its own economy to generate the country's income. Argentina practices mixed economy system where business owners have their freedom to gain capital but also have government regulation. Industries like agriculture that produces soybean, wheat and beef, automotive manufacturing, and tourism become few of the main sources of income for its GDP and a tool to combat its debt that factors in the country's inflation. These problems cause the country to have low livability as the cost of essentials like food and housing is high. Meanwhile, the job market and opportunities is still challenging to its locals, making the cost of living high for the time being. And next, I'll be explaining about the demographics of Argentina. Argentina is sized at 2,736,690,000 square kilometers and has 45,538,401 citizens, with 49.6% of them being male and the rest of them being a female, residing in the country as of 2023 and will keep growing year by year with low growth rate. Firstly, in 2023, Argentina has a labor force of 62.3% with unemployment rate of 6.14%. Even if the rates are decreasing over time, Argentinians still suffer from the country's high cost of living with low job opportunities that will only worsen the country's economic growth. Secondly, the GDP of the country reaches as much as $649 billion and $75 million in the year 2023, with manufacturing and industrial activity being the major contribution to Argentina's revenue. Last but not least, the inflation rate in Argentina is quite high. As we can see in the year 2023, the inflation rate was at an astonishing rate of 211.4%, which is a big jump from the year 2022 with 94.8%. Inflation rate which are caused by the country's debt and business owners are unable to run their agriculture activities because of their seasonal drought.
Let's talk about theory in inflation in Argentina. Okay, as of April 2025, Argentina annual inflation rate standing at 47.3%, according to the National Institute of Statistics and Calculation Index. This marks a future inflation decline from 50.9%. Okay, that's very high percentage actually. And in March 2025, and it's the lowest year-on-year increase since May 2021. Okay, since May is very increased, the inflation in Argentina. The reduction reflects the stagnation impact and at stabilizing the economy, which includes sharp public spending cuts and reduced rate debt to stimulate private sector activity and improve the supply of goods and service inflation. So that's the theory of inflation in Argentina. Okay, next we talk about type of inflation in Argentina. We have to reach hyperinflation and chronic high inflation. Okay, let's talk about first hyperinflation. Okay, the most served hyperinflation between 119 at 19 and to 119.90. Okay, with monthly inflation peaking at 197% in July 119 at 19. This episode involved extremely rapid price increase with annual inflation rate sometimes exceeding to 1,000%. 1,000% is very increasing and reaching a historic peak of over 200% in March 1990. I think it's very high inflation, which is hyperinflation. Okay, next is chronic high inflation. Chronic high inflation, which is from the early 1907 years to the early 1990 years, Argentina experienced chronic high inflation with an average annual inflation. Okay, chronic high inflation is very chronic. So from the early 1970 years and 1090, Argentina experienced chronic high inflation with an average annual inflation rate of about 254%. It's very high. If we think logically, it's very high. And between 1972 and 1991, this period include an extraordinary escalation pace, very long-term high inflation in Argentina. So that's why we call this chronic high inflation. Effect. Okay, economic effect is erosion of purchasing powers. Means erosion of purchasing power is high inflation, which recently stood at 43.5% year-on-year in May 2025. So down from 47.3%. So this means the inflation is increased from 52% to 47%. so this increase. So significantly reduce consumer real income, and then needs to making every good and service expensive and straining household budget, especially for lower income groups. It's very hard to group who have a lower income. They work hard. The inflation sharply rise the cost of living, particularly for essential items like food, transportation, and housing, which consider a large share of consumer expenses. This disproportionately affect poor households. So, it's very effect for everyone to poor household. So that everything is increased in cost of living. How Argentina overcome inflation? Okay, first they use a method short-term copy mechanism, which is many consumers use interest-free credit or buy now, pay later plans to avoid paying higher price later as inflation rapidly increase. So how they coping, how they overcome their inflation. And then they use a method better than also swapping goods, but buying and purchasing dollars as hedge against peso devaluation are common tactics. They use a common tactics to overcome the inflation. Okay, that first. The next is government-led strategy and reforms. Okay, first, presidency fiscal deficit financed by money printing, monetary expansion, like that, something like that, and leading to currency devaluation and inflation. That's mean they limit the printing of money, cash. And second, aggressive fiscal and monetary reform aim at stabilizing the economy and reduce inflation. So they made aggressive fiscal. That mean the government do fiscal in the extremely increase. And three is austerity measure reduce central bank money printing and the four currency stabilization. They make sure the currency is stabilizing to make sure the inflation decrease, at least decrease, and in the good way and still controlling.
Argentina has faced serious economic problems with very high and unstable inflation, which has greatly affected the life of its people. Firstly, from 2030 to 2024, Argentina inflation rate increased drastically. So, inflation rate surged from 25% to nearly 290%, recording one of the highest inflation rate in the world. Secondly, in 2020, inflation rate slightly lower, and in 2021, inflation rate increased again. As we know, 2020 to 2021, every country in the world, including Argentina, was affected by COVID-19 pandemic. So, in 2020, inflation rate slightly lower because of the price control and movement restriction. But when economy reopened in 2021, inflation rate is increasing. Thirdly, the poverty rate in Argentina increased to nearly 60% compared to 40% in 2023. Many people lost their jobs, and even worse, some were forced to eat leftover food just to fill the hungry stomach. From the thirdly point, there are several causes for this. Among them are government overspending, excessive money printing, and which weakened the peso. Lastly, inflation rate started to decrease in 2024 and 2025. In year 2025, the beginning of Argentina's recovery from year of extremely high inflation, but the challenge of living costs and economic instability remain major issue for its people.
In Argentina from 2013 to 2030, we can see the analysis. The 2013 is the best year because the decrease of inflation in a good way. But we can see that 2030 is a very worst years because it's very the high inflation is increased. So I think Argentina need to do something to control the inflation. And even though in 2025, I see the website in decrease by just a little.
Theory on unemployment. Unemployment means individuals are actively searching a job but unable to find jobs. It shows that there are more job seekers than job opportunity. Based on classical economic theory, markets operate under perfect competition with flexibility, wages and cash-based transaction. The labour market is viewed as static and ideal, where supply and demand determine employment level. Unemployment causes income loss, province and social issue, which wages payment to worker considered equal for similar job in the same market. Equivalent wages (WE) and labour equity (LE) are the point where supply and demand where supply meets types of unemployment. First, hindering unemployment, low productivity or worker not fully used, involved part-time or unsuitable job has little effect on total output. Two, seasonal unemployment, short-term and normal, happen when changing job or after graduation, not tied to economic downturns. 3. Classical unemployment caused by reduced aggregate demand, rest during recession, feel in gross direct effect economic performance. 4. Structural unemployment. Skill or location mismatch caused by long-term economic change, reduced productivity and growth potential. 5. Seasonal unemployment. Job loss due seasonal pattern. Common employment struktur, fishing struktur and tourism struktur. Temporary but affect income and economy. 6. Technological unemployment. Job loss due to automatic and AI. Effect repetitive or manual job sector. Can increase overall unemployment if not managed properly. Effect on unemployment. First, individual and families. Loss of income lead to financial stress and inability to meet basic needs such as food, healthcare, education. Mental health issue, depression, anxiety, low self-esteem and social isolation. Family instability, conflict, emotional stress especially for children and depreciation of household harmony. 2. Social, risk in criminal. Unemployment may push individual through criminal. Social division, groping gap between employment and unemployment, weakness, community tie. Loss of economic consequences, increases majorities and aggressive for public trust. 3. Economy, lower consumer spending, reduced purchasing power effect, business growth and job creativity. Reduced tax revenue, less income and less tax collection. Increasing government burden. Higher welfare spending lead to budget deficit and raising to overcome unemployment. First, fiscal policy managed by the government to control national revenue and spending. Aim, economy establish growth and public welfare. Tools, tax revenue and government expenditure operating and development. Expenditure during slowdown, increase spending, decrease tax. Contractionary during inflation, decrease spending, increase tax. 2. Monetary policy, controlled by the central bank to manage money supplies and interest rate. Aim, price stable, growth and currency value. Tools, overnight policy rate OPR, revision requirement, open market operation. Expenditure during slowdown, decrease in interest rate. Contractionary during inflation, increase interest rate. Both policy are essential to economic stability and long-term development.
We use standard economic formula to calculate and analyze the unemployment situation in Argentina from 2013 to 2023, including the unemployment rate, labor force participation rate, and economic growth rate. Unemployment in Argentina between 2013 and 2023, Argentina experienced fluctuating unemployment rates due to ongoing economic challenges. In early years, the rate remained stable at around 7%, but after 2016, it began to rise following a currency crisis, increased debt, and unstable policies. The situation became critical in 2020 when the COVID-19 pandemic caused unemployment to spike around 11.6%, especially affecting young women and informal workers. In response, the government introduced wage subsidy and emergency support which helped reduce the rate in the following years. By 2023, unemployment had dropped to 6.4% and labor force participation increased to 62.3%. While this shows signs of recovery, many jobs remain informal and unstable, and high inflation and negative GDP growth continue to threaten long-term job security in the country. In conclusion, Argentina is still facing major economic problems. Inflation remains extremely high, making it harder for people to afford basic needs. At the same time, unemployment is unstable and it especially affects young people and those working in informal jobs. The government has introduced short-term help like wage subsidy and support programs, but that alone is not enough. For real recovery, Argentina needs stronger and more consistent policies since inflation and unemployment are closely linked. The country must address both issues together to achieve long-term stability and a better future for its people.